We need to challenge the hundreds of callous and cynical laws introduced in the states targeting transgender children, terrifying families, and criminalizing doctors who give children the care they need. We have to protect these children so they know they are loved, and we will stand up for them and say they can seek for themselves.
All right, guys, so I'm sure that some of you are aware that we're currently having congressional hearings on anti-LGBTQ violence in this country because apparently that's some type of epidemic. Didn't know that was an epidemic. This comes after the Club Q shooting that happened in Colorado. We don't even know why that happened. We don't know if anti-LGBTQ hate is even the motive behind this. I mean, last time we checked, the suspect said that they were non-binary. They were actually a part of the LGBTQ community. So again, we don't know any of the facts, but for whatever reason, we're having this hearing about all the so-called anti-LGBTQ violence that's going on in this country. And also somehow, some way, they threw white supremacy in there as well, too. They made it about white supremacy, too.
Yes, St. Louis, and I thank you, Madam Chair, for convening this important hearing. And let me say to the witnesses, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for staying. And sorry you have to listen to the white supremacy raise its ugly head, throughout this hearing, but we're here to fight it. And so I just want to make sure you know that the rise of hate and violence against the LGBTQIA community follows a surge of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation driven by Republican state lawmakers, including in my home state of Missouri.
You know, I'm not even going to comment on what Ms. Bush said, but I'll say this: crime's going to be a top priority for the Republicans on this committee in the next Congress, and perhaps Ms. Bush could come give us some pointers on how she's reduced crime in St. Louis since she's been in Congress, and what her ideas are to further reduce crime in St. Louis. But wait a minute, St. Louis has one of the highest crime rates in America, so maybe she can come tell us how to secure the border and give her expertise on crime moving forward, because that's what the issue is in America.
Yeah, so somehow, some way, white supremacy got thrown into the mix here, and this is what they're talking about as well, too. Yeah, again, you gotta love how the left just is so much better at, like, spinning the conversation than the Republicans. They found a way to throw white supremacy in the mix here, right? When this has nothing to do with white supremacy, but they found a way to throw that in the mix. Anyways, yeah, this was a clown show, okay? Quite literally, these people on the left, Democrats, are just making things up. Like, you know, Joe Biden making up the fact that gay people are being thrown out of restaurants for being gay.
Congress is acting because an extreme Supreme Court has stripped away the right important to millions of Americans that existed for half a century. The Dobbs decision, the court's extreme conservative majority overturned Roe v. Wade. And that's not only the challenge ahead. When a person can be married in the morning and thrown out of a restaurant for being gay in the afternoon, this is still wrong. Wrong.
Bro, what? Like, what? This guy literally claimed that gay people are being kicked out of restaurants because they're gay. Now, I know that the Democrats, when it comes to race, they want to go back to Jim Crow. But I don't think that we're actually there when it comes to that, okay? I don't think there's anybody being kicked out of restaurants for being gay. But hey, I do know, or I can think of a couple stories about Christians being kicked out of restaurants for being Christian, but it doesn't seem like Joe Biden really cares about that all that much, because it's totally fine to discriminate against Christians, but don't discriminate against those people or else you're a bigot, right? But totally fine to discriminate against Christians. We're not even going to mention it. We're not going to talk about it, right? But again, the imaginary trauma that is going on in the LGBTQ community is supposed to be what is the forefront of the Biden administration's policy agenda and what they're actually really worried about. But again, like I told you guys, this was a clown show. And the Democrats and these lefties have gotten so desperate that they're just making things up, right? They're making things up because the facts are not on their side. Like, for example, Katie Porter, a congresswoman, just completely making up the idea that the term groomer and pedophile is being used to smear anybody who identifies as LGBTQ.
You know, this allegation of groomer and pedophile, it is alleging that a person is criminal somehow and engaged in criminal acts merely because of their identity, their sexual orientation, their gender identity. So this is clearly prohibited under Twitter's content, yet you found hundreds of these posts on the platform. Your team filed complaints about these posts, correct?
Yes.
And how often did Twitter act to take down these posts, which violated its own content policy?
Very rarely.
So from our calculation, it looks like about 99% of your complaints, they basically acted on one or two of the 100+ complaints you filed. Instead of taking them down, Twitter elevated them, allowing them to reach an approximate 72 million users. This is not just about what happens online. What happens online translates into real harms in people's lives.
Yeah, so I want y'all to understand what's going on here. The Democrats and the liberals and the left-wing loonies are openly admitting that they are the ones that are associating the term groomer and pedophile with the LGBTQ community. I want you to understand that those are the people, they are the ones that are smearing those individuals unjustly. Those terms only being used for people who are trying to impose their sexual ideology and agenda on children. That's it. That's the only time those terms are used. Nobody is going in the street and saying, hey, because you're gay or because you're lesbian or because you're part of the LGBTQ community, you're a groomer. No, nobody is doing that. Nobody, at least as far as I know, I'm not. I only can really speak for myself, but I'm not saying too much of that. Okay, I'm not saying too much. Nobody's saying that Blair White is a groomer, right? I'm just saying nobody is saying that. Well, why is that? It's because it's not used for people in the LGBTQ community specifically. It's used for people who are participating in that activity. If you're not participating in that activity, then that term will not be used. But see, this is a projection from the left. They're saying what they really think. They're the ones that are smearing the whole LGBTQ community with those terms, not us. And when given an opportunity to get an easy layup on this issue, to set the record straight, they just miss. As Miss Jessie Pocock, who is the founder of a LGBTQ youth nonprofit, basically stated that she does not think that parents have the right to know if kids are going through sex changes. And the age of consent used by her nonprofit for transitioning children is 12.
Person is safe and protected. We are constantly filing reports of abuse and neglect because of parents
I understand the cases
young people who
it
they
sounds
are.
like you're deflecting the question a little bit. I understand cases of abuse. There's laws to protect the abuse. I mean, schools actually are legally obligated to report cases of abuse. Same for churches and the like, anyone who deals with young people. But, do parents have a right? Should they be informed about what's going on? Do they have a right to know what's going on in their kids' lives?
So I think, again, those of us who are protecting and supporting young people are there and trusted with the information of the things that they are dealing with. In terms of parents' rights to know at schools, I mean, here in Colorado, parents don't have the right. If a young person is questioning their gender or their sexuality, there are laws in place that say that they have the right to process that with their trusted counselor and so forth.
You do a significant amount of your work with kids even starting at age 13.
Yeah.
What would be the age of consent then in your mind?
In our community, the age of consent to mental health therapy is 12 years old. So we have laws that enable young people to connect with trusted adults who can support them. That is just so important. It prevents suicide. And so we serve young people at 13 because we know they come to us.
Yeah, so again, there's no evidence that transitioning is going to help people with the suicide risk. Again, they just make that up. Also, on top of that, again, guys, this is an easy layup, man. Like, I mean, I don't understand. What else do you think that people are going to say? What conclusion do you think people are going to come to when you openly say, yeah, we believe that the age of consent for my nonprofit should be age 12. Age 12. To start transitioning kids. We're talking about transitioning their gender or their sexuality. And we don't think parents should know about it. They should only talk with us about it, right? But they get upset and they get mad when people throw out a certain term, right, that starts with a G, but yet this is the stuff that they're saying. Like, you're openly saying that, no, we want to be able to have these conversations with children and to guide them along a certain path when we're talking about their sexuality and their gender identity, and we don't want parents to be involved, right? We don't want parents to be involved. I mean, I'm just saying, what do you think people are going to say? You think parents are going to be fine with that? You think society's going to be cool with that? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Which goes to show you how Looney Tunes these people are. They're out of touch with reality. And quite honestly, this stuff is a waste of time. I don't even know why we're having this hearing, because these people are beyond the pale. Like, they are not living in the same reality. Like, for example, and a follow-up question, another question, this lady claimed that she never heard of any case of a child or an adult detransitioning, aka not wanting to be transgender anymore. Take a look.
A lot of people in the news coming out detransitioning. Could you speak to that phenomenon and what's that person going through? Did they get it wrong? Were they going through a period? Is it just a fluid thing? I mean, could you speak to that?
Well, I can't really speak to an individual's personal experience. I mean, somebody's gender is just a really personal experience, but I can speak to you. I've been in this work for a long time. I know a lot of trans folks, close friends, family members, and I just never heard a case of anyone detransitioning. So I honestly don't think it's a real.
There's a number of cases in the news right now where this is happening, and the concern for parents have is, we've all had awkward teen years where we've questioned things in existence and a lot of things, and the question is kids who are maybe making a permanent decision even without the input of their parents and making irreversible decisions. There's some who've talked about they can't have kids anymore and they wish they could and the like. And so I'm curious how we would work to protect kids. I wish we had more time.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Because I think this is an important issue to get into. But thank you for being here.
Yeah, this lady just said with a straight face that she never heard of a case of anybody detransitioning. This is how you know it's a waste of time, right? You're talking to Looney Tunes. You're talking to people that are not living in reality. People who are going to deny. There's no downsides to transitioning. No downsides. These kids know exactly what they're doing. They're trans, they're LGBTQ, and they must go through this. And we don't want parents to know about it. It's a very personal issue for them, but only we can talk to them about it. If you say anything different, you hate trans kids, you're a bigot, you're homophobic, you're transphobic, and they're going to throw races in there too because black trans women, right? This is what they're gonna do. And what really gets me about this is the over exaggeration of the violence against the LGBTQ community, which they want you to think is an epidemic, especially when it comes to trans people. You guys heard that. Trans people, their lives are at risk, especially black trans women. Do you guys know worldwide how many transgender people were murdered in 2021? If you guess that it was at least 1,000 people, you're wrong, right? 375 transgender people were murdered in 2021. And this is worldwide. This is not just the U.S. Worldwide. 70% of those murders occurred in Central and South America, guys. Central and South America is where 70% of those murders happen. So think about all the trans people on Earth. I mean, there is over 1 million trans people in the United States alone. Think about all the trans people on Earth. Only 375 of them are killed per year, I guess, for being trans. I'm not sure. But if we look deep into statistics here, it goes to show you, again, how more ridiculous this stuff is. It's because 96% of those killed, murdered, were trans women or trans feminine people. And over half, 58% of those, were sex workers. So basically, if you participate in a profession that is already at risk, regardless of if you're trans or not trans, you're at a higher risk of being murdered just in virtue of the fact that you are participating in an activity that is dangerous. You're selling your body to sketchy people on the street, mainly to criminals. if you take that all into account, if you're living in the United States as a transgender person, there's virtually a zero chance, statistically, basically a zero chance that you're going to be murdered simply for being trans. I mean, we're talking about probably maybe less than 10 cases a year out of millions of trans people, right? I mean, I'm just saying, this problem is so overblown. It's just as bad as the police brutality thing. When they talk about white cops killing unarmed black men. It's that bad. They make a big fuss over nothing. Again, I'm not saying that those people's lives don't matter. They do matter, but let's not pretend like we don't have bigger issues. We have a much bigger issue with just crime in general than we do in regards to crime or violence against LGBTQ individuals just because they're LGBTQ. If you solve the crime problem, I guarantee you the LGBTQ community will benefit and the rest of the population will benefit, and it won't be nearly as divisive. And you won't have to sit here through these ridiculous hearings that we shouldn't be having in the first place, hearing these people talk about how they're not in touch with reality. Right? Again, you can't come to a reasonable solution with these people because they're simply not reasonable. They're not irrational. And they've made that very, very, very clear every single time they open up their mouth. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.